Hello, welcome to the sideboard here at the StarCityGames.com Standard Open in Baltimore, part of the SCG Tour. I'm Nick Miller alongside #1 on the Players Championship leaderboard, Jeff Hoogland. How you doing?
I'm doing well, Nick.
A new format comes around. People want to see what Jeff Hoogland is playing because you're always doing something outside the box. And today, no exception. You've got Gitrog Monster in your deck. A lot of people are going to be happy about that.
It was the very first card I pre-ordered from the spoilers. I saw this card and saw the wall of text, and some of it involved drawing cards. I was like, this is a card I want to be playing.
I could get behind this.
Yep.
All right, so you're playing a green-black mid-range deck. You got a little bit of a colorless splash here, but not quite the Eldrazi theme that we see. Of course, you got Thought-Knot Seer and Matter Reshaper, but more of a green-black kind of rock deck here.
Yeah, basically. I actually started without the Thought-Knot Seers in the deck, and he was the missing piece of the how do you beat ramp puzzle, because traditionally mid-range decks like this really struggle in a matchup like that, but he provides a clock and powerful disruption, so that's why he got added in.
Okay. Let's get a brief overview first before we go into the card choices. I want to ask you a couple things about when you're preparing for an event like this with a new format.
Okay.
The SCG Tour has a lot of teams popping up, a lot of people working together. You seem to be kind of a solo deck builder, but a brewer at the same time. What did you test going into this event, and how did you kind of evaluate everything going into it?
So whenever a new set comes out, I always like to try and pick 2 to 3 cards to like build archetypes around and test and really focus on those cards. Going into the 2 weeks before this, when we finally had like a full spoiler and everything, the 2 cards that I really knew I wanted to play one of was the Gitrog Monster or Nahiri, the new red-white Planeswalker. And the red-white deck just kept coming up a little bit short in card advantage and being a little bit too clunky, so the Gitrog Monster deck felt a little bit smoother overall, so I tunneled in on focusing on tuning this deck.
Looking for card advantage, I think the Gitrog Monster is where you want to be.
Yep.
So you got the green-black deck here, you've got Den Protectors, we got Sylvan Advocates, those types of creatures you expect to see, Nissa, but then you got a bunch of removal spells here. Ultimate Price, Languish, a card. Languish in specific is just a card popping up everywhere post-rotation.
Yep.
Every deck with black seems to be playing some number of this card.
Yep, so Languish was actually only in my sideboard as 3 copies until this morning, and I was testing against the Blue-White Humans deck some more last night, and there was just, looked like it was everywhere this morning, and it's rarely a card you're super sad to draw, so I decided to add 2 of them into the main deck. It's great against all the Secure the Waste decks as well. And then something that actually has come up in testing is you can Languish plus Spatial Contortion to kill the Flip Dabby.
All right. Like everyone is building their decks around, have to be able to beat Archangel Avacyn, and then being able to beat Ormondal once the Abbey flips.
Yep.
And your deck definitely has some specific answers to do that.
Yep.
Also, World Breaker here looks like kind of can blow up the Abbey before it flips.
Yep, and it blocks both sides of Avacyn very nicely. We don't have a ton of rampage of a couple Death Cap Cultivators, so World Breaker is a very fair card in this deck, because in the mid-range matchups, if they don't have their Declaration in stone right away, they kill him, you grind, and when you sacrifice the land World Breaker, you draw a card with Gitrog.
All the ins, all the outs. Now you got a lot of things moving in with the Gitrog Monster and the land package. We got to mention you've got Drownyard Temple in here. You got a bunch of colorless lands to facilitate the Eldrazi, but you also have a lot of value going in with the Gitrog Monster in terms of your mana base too.
Yeah, I started actually without the Eldrazi in the deck and just like a straight green-black rock deck, but then I was already playing Blighted Fen, and I was playing Evolving Wilds, and I was playing Drownyard Temple just because I wanted them in the deck, and at that point I was just like, well, we had a waste for the Evolving Wilds, and then like maybe add one other colorless source and we have a little splash.
Spatial Contortion, your other removal spell. Then Pulse of Marasa, we saw this card pop up in the Bring to Light decks, a couple of sideboard options as well, just very powerful in a deck with Den Protector.
Not only that, but the Pulse of Marasa is very good at just swinging races in your favor. This is a rock deck, which means in addition to having controlling elements, we have a very efficient clock between Sylvan Advocate and Thought-Knot and the Gitrog Monster, which means that suddenly having 6 life when they go to attack you for lethal and then killing them on the crackback when they weren't expecting it is something that often comes up.
So going into this format, did you know you wanted it would be in the mid-range territory? Did you look at control? Did you look at aggro or anything like that?
Aggressive and mid-range decks are always generally where you want to be in the first week of a format. It's very difficult to control a target that you can't see. Control decks will generally be better, the second week and moving forward. But I definitely know I wanted to be on the more aggressive side. Even this is like an aggro mid-range deck sometimes with a lot of its draws.
Yeah, you got a lot of value going on. Of course, you want as much value with the Gitrog Monster, but Matter Reshaper letting you turn into a bunch of things.
Correct.
As well.
One of the people, a few people have asked me why I'm not playing the Tireless Tracker card instead of Matter Reshaper, the one that investigates whenever you make a land drop. And the reason why is Matter Reshaper is much better against the aggressive decks and the control decks in the format because it almost always nets you a card unless it's getting like Stasis Snared or Clued, Declaration in Stone.
Right.
Clued. and so with Tireless Tracker, while it can get bigger, it's much slower and you can't get value on it if you don't play it till turn 4.
Okay. Now you said you wanted to really tune the ramp matchup. That's where Thought Not Seer came in. Was that one of the pillars of the format you were kind of testing for?
Yeah, the 3 decks I think you wanted to be able to have game against this weekend going into the event were the black-white Secure the Waste, Abby, Gideon deck when whatever other Planeswalkers are playing, an aggressive deck, likely the white-based humans deck, maybe green-white Megamorph, and then ramp as a third.
All right. Well, that's the main deck. You also got an Obnixilis hanging out in there, but we all know what he does.
Yep.
Sideboard cards, not a whole lot new cards, but you do have Clip the Wings, and this is a concession to Ormondal, correct?
Yeah, definitely. I was on the plane. This card wasn't in my sideboard in any of my testing, and I was on the plane here, and I was like, how do we kill Ormondal? And in these colors, the only way I had previously was Languish the Board, Blighted Fenyu was the out, man. And then I was scrolling through spoilers, and Clip the Wings came up, and I was like, oh, that can help the Esper Dragons match up too because it's reasonable against Ojutai, and then it also comes in against Avacyn, which is great.
It's got all the bases covered. Then you got a bunch of discard spells here between Duress and Transgress the Mind. Where's this coming in against control decks?
Control decks and ramp again. We board up counting Thought Not Seer as a discard spell into 10 full pieces of disruption. So generally the ramp decks are light on cards that really matter. So if you're able to take 1 or 2 away, generally you can pressure them enough before they redraw out of it.
Right. Ultimate Price, more removal, but then Illness in the Ranks. This is a card that we saw a lot.
Virulent Plague.
Virulent Plague.
Yep.
Dealing with the creature tokens is very key.
Correct.
There's so many decks that are pumping out tokens.
Yeah, I think if you're not playing Secure the Waste, you either need to be an aggressive deck or you need to have a very real plan against it. Virulent Plague, Conflict's Return, Languish, something.
Okay. Lastly, Kalitas. This card was an all-star in the Jeskai Black decks, the Red-Black Dragons, all that kind of stuff last format.
Yep.
No rally to worry about now, but I imagine you just still want the value.
Yeah, it's another card because one of the main reasons we play Pulse in the main is because it's a good way to gain life, and Kalitas gives us additional sources of life gain against the aggressive decks. A lot of the aggressive decks tend to be a little bit removal light as well, so his other text can go to work in those matchups. I actually played against an Nantaku Husk deck today at 3-0, so it came into that matchup and did a lot of work as well.
Right, that whole shell's still sort of there with the the
it
sacrifice
was like
outlets
collected
and
companies and stuff like that too. So yeah,
having a little bit of splash damage for that, not that bad either. But the deck looks pretty sweet. You're 5-1, right?
5-1, yep.
So the deck's looking good. Typical Jeff Hoogland deck. There's a lot of value, a lot of card drawing.
Yep.
Killing the creatures. Happy with where you're at this weekend?
Yeah, I think so. I think I picked a good choice for the format that I was expecting, and so far my one loss is that Cryptolith combo deck.
Yes.
I'm not prepared to beat that, and I expect that if I play against that again with this configuration, that I would likely lose. So if that deck does well this weekend and you want to play this deck moving forward, you definitely need to reevaluate some card choices for that.
All right.
But outside of that, I'm pretty happy with it.
All right. Well, thanks for joining me here in the sideboard, Jeff. Stay tuned to StarCityGames.com all weekend long for the action here in Baltimore.